First off, I've been up here 3 years, and the first thing I've learned is that if you're on the Senate floor, you don't have to remember what you said before. I mean, I've been shocked when I preside over the Senate where people get up there and they would say exactly the opposite that I knew that they had said before. And that's exactly what's going on here. This is not about elections. This is, well, it is about elections. It's only about Democrats winning elections. It's not about improving elections. I'm from a state that we have early voting, we have absentee voting, you can vote on election day. We want to make sure people vote, but you shouldn't be able to violate the sacred right of voting. Nobody's vote should be diluted by somebody that doesn't have a right to vote. So we've talked about a lot of things that people have said. This is Joe Biden when he was in the Senate. The Senate ought to not act rashly by changing its rules to satisfy a strong-willed majority acting in the heat of the moment. That's exactly what this is. Chuck Schumer is scared to death of his primary. He's doing everything he can to make sure that AOC does not run against him. He's going to go as far to the left as possible, and he's mad that he can't get this done with 50 votes. We're going to do everything we can to make sure the filibuster lasts because it's good for the American public.
It's no longer about who gets to vote. It's about making it harder to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote and whether your vote counts at all. It's not hyperbole. This is a fact. Look, this matters to all of us. The goal of the former president and his allies is to disenfranchise anyone who votes against them. Simple as that. The facts won't matter. Your vote won't matter. They'll just decide what they want and then do it. That's the kind of power you see in totalitarian states, not in democracies. We must be vigilant, and the world is watching. I know the majority of the world leaders, the good and the bad ones, adversaries and allies alike. They're watching American democracy and seeing whether we can meet this moment. And that's not hyperbole. When I showed up at the G7 with 7 other world leaders, there were a total of 9 present. Vice President Harris and I have spent our careers doing this work. I said, America's back. And the response was, for how long? For how long? As someone who's worked in foreign policy my whole life, I never thought I would ever hear our allies say something like that.
Well, this is actually an issue on which I've changed my mind over the 10 years I've been here. When I first arrived, I was adamantly opposed to changing the filibuster. The last few years, I was one of the people on the Republican side who changed my mind and said I was open to changing the filibuster. Why? And what I said publicly is I said the reason I'm open to changing it is I think the Democrats, when they get power, will do this. They will ram it through. I've seen the radicals in their party, and I think they're going to ram it through. And if they're going to do it, I don't think it makes sense for only one side to do it and not the other. I can tell you I've had conversations over the last year with both Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema where I've told both of them, I said, listen, you guys maybe are in the process of proving me wrong, and I'd be very happy to be proven wrong if y'all don't ram this through. I think the world is a much better place with the filibuster, with protection of minority rights. I think turning the Senate into a place where the majority can trample the rights of the minority is a terrible outcome. And the reason I have gone back and forth on this particular issue is I've seen the rise of the radicals in the Democratic Party. And, you know, it speaks volumes. There were, 27 Democrats who signed this letter saying they wouldn't change the filibuster. I would encourage all the reporters here, every one of those 27 Democrats, you ought to be asking them today, are you a hypocrite? You signed it when the Republicans were in power. Do you only support minority rights when you're the minority? You ought to ask every one of those Democrats, do you agree with Chuck Schumer that ending the filibuster is doomsday for democracy? And if Manchin and Sinema hold, and I hope and pray that they do, it will protect this institution. And if the Democrats protect this institution, I think the Republicans should as well. And to be clear, we did. The Republicans had the White House, the Senate, the House. We had every ability to do exactly what Chuck Schumer wants to do right now, and the Republican Party didn't. This is a power grab, but it's not just a power grab. It's a power grab to enable a power grab. What Schumer wants to do it on is a takeover of elections. And, you know, it's interesting. The rhetoric the Democrats use on this is Jim Crow. You know, Jim Crow laws were written by elected Democrats, and they were designed to prevent the voters from voting Democrats out of office. That's what Schumer's trying to do today. This is Jim Crow 2.0 of Democrats once again trying to take away the ability of the voters to vote them out of office. It's wrong, and it's an abuse of power.
Senator Schumer seems intent on moving forward with this, and they've manufactured a crisis to try and convince people that convince their members at least, that is, that there's a rationale for doing this. But we all know better. And this is purely and simply a power grab. It's something that's not new. It's something that Schumer's been talking about literally since 2019. The election issue has been talking about for a lot longer than that. These aren't new ideas. These are ideas they've been trying to get into law to give them an advantage in elections going back years. But with respect to the filibuster, it's something that he has been talking about now for several years. And so this is an excuse. It is nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else than that to try and break the United States Senate and to create an atmosphere where in a very partisan way they can move their agenda with just Democrat votes. And that is absolutely contrary to what the founders envisioned the Senate to be all about. The Senate was to be a place, as the leader pointed out, where smaller states like my state of South Dakota, have a voice, where the minority party in this country, those who didn't win the election, have a voice in the legislative process. It requires bipartisanship, it requires consensus, and it creates greater stability long term, because you won't constantly have a revolving door where when power changes hands here in Washington, D.C., the next side comes in and completely changes what the previous side had done. This is all about stability. It's all about creating an atmosphere for moderation. It's about predictability when it comes to our laws. And the Senate Democrats are intent, it seems at least, their leadership, on blowing this all up. I hope that it will fail. I hope that there are wiser heads on their side. And I hope, for the sake of the people that I represent in South Dakota, who the Democrats seem to be saying right now, we don't care about what South Dakota thinks, that people all across this country will realize what's at stake here. And that is the history that we have as a nation of making sure that those who live in different parts of the country, those who didn't necessarily win the election, those who represent the minority party, have a role in our government and in our lawmaking process.
The email you're referring to was an email of Dr. Collins to me. If you look at the email
that you responded to and hurried up and said, I can do it. We got something in Wired magazine.
No. I think in usual fashion, Senator, you are distorting everything about me.
Did you ever object to Dr. Collins' characterization of them as friends? Did you write back to Dr. Collins and say, no, they're not friends, they're esteemed scientists, and it would be beneath me
I did not
do that? You responded to him that you would do it, and you immediately got an article in Wired, and you sent it back to him and said, hey, look, I've got him. I nailed him in Wired of all scientific publications.
That's not what went on.
You
there you go again. You just do the same thing every hearing.
That was your response. And this wasn't the only time. So your desire to take down people...
You're absolutely incorrect. As usual, Senator, you are incorrect almost everything you said.
Well, no, you deny, but the emails tell the truth of this.
No.
This wasn't the only time. Your desire to take down those who disagree with you didn't stop with Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. You conspired with Peter Daszak, who you communicated with privately, and other members of the scientific community that wrote opinion pieces for Nature. 5 of them signed a paper for Nature, an opinion piece. 17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, there's no way this could have come from the lab?
That was not me. What I
Did you talk with any of those
See,
scientists
but
privately?
you keep distorting the truth. It is stunning how you do
Did you talk
that.
to any of the scientists privately
Yes.
who wrote the opinion? You did.
Well-
what were they telling you privately?
Well, let me explain. You know, you're going back to that original discussion when I brought together a group of people to look at every possibility with an open mind. So not only are you distorting it, you are completely turning it around, as
Were
you
most of the
usually
scientists
do.
that came to you privately, did they come to you privately and say, no way, this came from the lab? Or was their initial impression, Dr. Gary and others that were involved, was their initial impression actually that it looked very suspicious for a virus that came from a lab?
Senator, we are here at a committee to look at a virus now that has killed almost 900,000 people. And the purpose of the committee was to try and get things out, how we can help to get the American public. And you keep coming back to personal attacks on me that have absolutely no relevance to reality.
Do you think
you.